Welcome back to another episode of TikTok Famous Podcast. I'm so excited to have Tom Bosworth on the show today. He is TikTok famous, and we're going to be talking about all things law and social media. So stay with me.
You're listening to the TikTok Famous Podcast, where viral fame meets raw reality. Join your host, Meredith Willits, as she dives deep with your favorite creators to uncover the real stories behind the scroll, the highs, the lows, the algorithm chaos, and everything in between. This is not your average interview. This is the TikTok Famous Podcast.
Tom Bosworth, I have you back on. I had you on Meredith with a Y. Now I have you on TikTok Famous. Thank you so much for being with me yet again.
Sure. Great to be here. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I loved our conversation, but I do want to talk about the fact that you have such an amazing presence on TikTok and sharing your legal everything over on social media. So, what made you didn't step out of law, but take law with you into the social media stratosphere? What prompted you to do that?
Someone said to me that I should start doing videos on TikTok, and I had a TikTok account, but I didn't use it for law. I was like, why would anyone want to listen to law videos, right? Like that's terrible. That sounds boring. But I did it, and then I got like 40,000 views on my first video, which I had never had anything like that before when I would post silly stuff, and then I started to realize I thought there was like a utility in spreading information and sharing a lot of the things I do in my particular line of work, because I think it helps the public, and a lot of it relates to public safety. So I then just kept it going, and then it sort of just took off from there.
And you do catastrophic claims for like when people have catastrophic loss, death, issues with doctors, and so on and so forth. So you deal with a lot of people or their families who have been inside of a really difficult situation because of malpractice or companies that don't do the right thing. And one of the questions that I wrote down that I wanted to ask you today was, what happens inside of your brain when you see the powers that be, politicians, lawmakers, etc., or even the people asking the lawmakers to roll back the red tape, roll back the things that keep the public safe? What do you see or feel when you're seeing people be so they don't understand that those safety nets are there to keep us safe from lead paint in our water, toxicity in the food sources, etc.? How does that make you feel when you're seeing people go, oh, get rid of all these regulations?
Well, I have two different reactions to it. So my first reaction is that I wish people knew how lax America actually was when it comes to regulations that affect the environment and, our safety when it comes to toxins and cancerous chemicals that we ingest or that we breathe. I mean, we as a country are way behind the eight ball in many other advanced countries in terms of protecting our citizens. So anytime we have talk about rolling back regulations, I think it's kind of funny. Not funny, but you get people screaming and crying about regulations, and I'm like, well, we're not, we don't even really impose very strict regulations to begin with. We're pretty pro-industry and pretty lax on a lot of very dangerous things that we should be strict about. So that's my first reaction. Secondly, though, as a trial lawyer, I just, going up against companies and getting verdicts and getting judgments against them, I have no faith in our politicians whatsoever to meaningfully help the cause, because in my mind, not every single one of them, but the overwhelming majority of them on both sides of the aisle have been bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical industry, big ag, big chemical companies, and they're just sort of just beholden to the lobbyists. So if you're holding your breath waiting for the politicians to actually, pass laws that help us, then you will probably run out of breath, because it's not going to happen. So that's where I come in, and not me personally, but I think trial lawyers and jury trials are the last sort of democratic vestige, in my mind, that actually holds companies accountable. It shouldn't be that way, but that's where we're at.
I think too that people think that, like, I'm a middle class person. I would never pollute the stream. I wouldn't do that. So of course this car company is not going to do that. Of course this plastics company is going to make sure that there's the right chemical filter on the plant, whatnot. And, you know, I don't think they realize is that at the end of the day, if they have to put a multi-million-dollar filter on the top of their soot, you know, whatever, that's going to shoot out all over the city, they're going to save that $1 million because they have shareholders that are going to go, where'd that $1 million loss come from? And you're like, oh, I'm trying to save the community. And it's just like, well, couldn't you have done something? Like, it's not necessarily you being accountable for you. And I would ask you, listeners, have you ever thrown a can of paint in your garbage can? Because if you have, you're doing the wrong thing. You are acting in alignment with these big businesses. And all it takes is a quick documentary search on Netflix or one of these other streaming stations to see the litany of companies who have harmed, unborn children, or, caused cancer clusters. I know in my own town, we would run in the house, we would hear it go woof, woof. I grew up in Avon Lake, Ohio, and all of a sudden then you'd hear shh, and it was the fly ash coming out of the top of the electric plant, and it would cover your cars, it would be all over the grass. And there's, so myself included, so many kids from my town who at one time or another, in one form or another, in one family member or another, has cancer. And between that, and then they'd have these trucks that would just drive up and down the street with these yellow lights, and it would just blow that what do you call that, mosquito spray. And it would just be like spraying, and the kids, we'd all run in the house, from this mosquito spray, and these trucks would just drive up and down the street. And we just think either, a lot of times it's just lack of education from, they don't know that this is going to cause cancer, but a lot of times it's cutting corners. And I think that we don't realize that the government should be there to have these regulations to protect us from the capitalistic brain. And they're not just being mean.
Yeah.
They're not just trying to stop. They're not just trying to stop industry. You know what I mean? That's probably a good video to make, is like, hey, just so you know, Portugal doesn't let any of this. And I think we're learning that about the food. Don't you think, Tom? Is like, we're starting to realize, like, none of the food we eat in the United States is allowed to be served in any other country in the world but ours.
Yeah, it's really not a made up thing. That's the facts. And I grew up in a blue collar family, and I didn't grow up with a nutritional treatise on the windowsill, and where we were talking deep level, so it's not like I came into this stuff naturally, but it's, when you look at it and you look at the science and you look at what we're eating, it's kind of crazy. Right? It's not crazy in the context of our country because we've normalized it, but compare it to Europe, right? And I'm not here to say Europe's got the gold standard for everything and that America sucks. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm just saying, if this country, and you just over and over and over and over and over again in Europe are all agreeing that this food here is terrible and it's dangerous, it's probably true. Right? Yeah, it's probably true, and then we're probably wrong, right? If it's 1 verse 28, you might be wrong. But I think a lot of people get caught up in this nationalistic pride, and oh well, we're America and this is how it is here, and if you don't like it, leave. And it's I wish the conversation didn't have to devolve to that so quickly, and instead we could talk about, well, what about don't you want your children to eat food that doesn't kill them, or we have now, I think the next generation of humans in our country is, for the first time ever, has a lesser life expectancy than the
Yeah.
generation before it. So that's absurd, and especially in an evolving technological world where we're supposed to be innovative. And so my hope is that through my videos, I try to break this stuff down in a way that's not lawyer speak and not, saturated with all sorts of unnecessary lingo, but just straight facts, straight information, and let people kind of like reach their own conclusions.
And one of the things we talked about in the other recording that you and I did on the other podcast was, some of the things that we can do as individuals. Like, I think a lot of times when we're all talking about this stuff like food and chemicals and, healthcare, it can become so overwhelming that I think a lot of people just put their hands over their ears and say, I don't care. I'm going to get cancer from something. Everything's unhealthy. And we all just like run for the hills and say, screw it, and throw our hands up. But there are some things that you and I talked about which are very easy things that we can do, which is, when going to the doctor's office, understand that, you should take someone with you, because as you're getting information, you hear the doctor's words and you stay there. But your advocate, your spouse, your friend, your partner, your parent, somebody that's in the room is listening to all of it. Some other things that you talk about is asking questions. Are you having surgery in a surgery center, or am I having surgery in a hospital? Am I going to be worked on by a student, or am I going to be worked on by the actual physician? There are things that we can do. And these are some of the things that you're bringing to your social media channel that I think is saving lives, to be honest.
Well, that's really nice. I don't want to take that much credit,
Trust.
but
Just just let me just give you what you deserve.
well, no, I grew up in a town where General Electric (GE) polluted the Housatonic River, which is the main river in my county. Um, for 50 years, they were dumping PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, a man-made chemical manufactured by Monsanto that's so dangerous that our own country actually banned it for all use in 1979. So that's how nasty PCBs were, and GE was polluting the river anywhere from 800,000 pounds to a couple million, based on estimates in terms of how much was dumped in the river. And now there are cancer clusters, and they also illegally dumped this stuff all over the town. And I represent children and people now in a particular elementary school where they dumped soil laden with these chemicals to literally use as the foundation for the elementary school in the 1950s. And I represent kids that go to that school now that have leukemia, brain tumors, cancer. Teachers, I have one client teacher who had 3 separate forms of cancer, never smoked
Wow.
a cigarette in her life. Marathon runner, gardener, that cancer kept coming back, different forms. So we now know that, PCBs are cancerous, toxic, horrible. But these sorts of things happen all over the country all the time, and they can only continue to occur if there's a lack of information and a lack of education and a lack of communication. So social media is really, really bad in some ways, and it's really, really good in others. I don't have like a binary view of it. I certainly don't think it's without its flaws, but in terms of information and sharing stuff that matters, it's a very important tool. So that's what I hope, like that's my goal with all this. I have plenty to do in my day job as a lawyer. I have plenty of cases. I'm a real trial lawyer. I pick a jury this Thursday, so I do practice law, but I just felt like I had a responsibility to start speaking up on some of these things.
Do you think that there'll ever be a day when these companies have to pay out so much money? I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't get an email that says class action lawsuit from whatever it is, right? Um, do you think that we'll ever see a day where these lawsuits and these payouts to victims will exceed the income by, or the lack of spending for the irresponsibility, where like, hey, we got to do it the right way because, Tom Bosworth is coming after us, at all if we don't get our shit together. Like, when are they going to start realizing, like, let's do it right the first time?
I hope so, but I don't know. I think we have punitive damages in our country, which are civil money damages to punish people. They're different than money damages that you get to compensate you for a loss. Like, for example, if you lose your leg and you can't work anymore, you can get money to compensate you because you can't work anymore. So you get money for however much money you were going to make for the rest of your life had your leg not been amputated. That's like a compensation. Punitive is punishment. So it's a civil jury can sit and hear the evidence and determine, this is not only negligent, but it's what us lawyers call reckless. It's reckless, or it's done with an evil motive or a reprehensible motive, or egregious. These are just different words that are used in the law. And then if you can prove that, then the jury can actually hear what the net worth of the company is, like Johnson & Johnson's $68 billion. And then they can take whatever amount of money they want from the company and give it to the plaintiff to punish. That's the purpose of punitive damages, is to deter conduct in the future, to prevent it from happening. So we do see a good number of punitive damages verdicts, thankfully, but the companies have endless money to appeal, drag it out, and keep making money the whole time, right? So it's this vicious cycle. But I do believe that punitive damage verdicts do affect company behavior, and they do help. I think that they really do, because at the end of the day, when you're going to deal with these companies, they only care about their bottom line. So if you hit them where it hurts, I think that they do think about that.
Is there a thing, like, so when they get the punitive damage claim against them and they have to pay out, is there also like, and you have to clean it up, and you have to fix this, and you have to move this school that is continuing to get people sick? Like, is there a package deal with that, or is it always just money?
It's usually just money in terms of what I do, because those other things you talk about in theory, this goes back to what we were saying earlier. And in theory, those are things the government would accomplish through government enforcement, whether that's the EPA or the State Department of Environmental Protection or whatnot. Those are usually the avenues through which you would get something like that to be done, like the school torn down. And usually us private civil attorneys aren't viewed as being the ones to do that, though I've seen more of a push recently of us doing that. And I'm certainly at the forefront of that and a proponent of it, because I think without that, you're really kind of spitting in the wind.
Yeah. I mean, because then it's just, you're just back in this cycle. Is there a way out of this? Like, with these groups that are talking to the government and saying, like, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of money at you. We're going to buy your vote to keep cigarettes legal, and, let us run our company the way we want without any red. I just think that right now we've turned into such a society of, it's either red tape and you're against capitalism, or, and you're like this liberal mindset of anti-capitalism, or you're, like, just let it all be the way that it wants to be and let people do and make money however they want, and that's freedom and that's America. Like, it's become this political thing that I don't think it needs to be. It needs to be more just steeped in things that make sense.
Yeah, I think a good first step, like if I were president, which that's a terrifying thing to say, but
I'm here for it.
one of the first things I would do if I had the power was I would eliminate all lobbying in all politics.
Yeah.
Period. Like a wholesale. I mean, the problem with that, ironically, is that Congress would have to pass the bill. And if I were the president, or whoever was the president, they'd have to sign it. So that wouldn't even become a law unless Congress made it a law, and they're the ones being lobbied. They're the ones that have these relationships. So we're in a really, I think about what you just said. I think about people that are very pro criminal justice and pro law enforcement, and they sometimes tend to be the most lax when it comes to, like, oh, we don't need more regulation, we don't need more of this. And I think we're really not talking about different things when we talk about the law and the enforcement. I mean, like there's harm that can happen when people if somebody assaults a random old lady on the street and beats her and she dies, that's a crime. And if there weren't a law to remedy that, that would be a problem. Like that person should be held accountable if they did that. But it's more subtle when it's a company polluting a river and dumping cancerous oil into a river. And I think it's easier for people to sort of separate that in their mind or not see it, not hear it, not understand it. But the problem is it's certainly affecting us. I mean, it's really tangibly affecting us as a country, and we're really, really not doing well health-wise. And that's for a lot of different reasons. I think it's mainly because of the food we eat. It's also how many chemicals we have swirling around us. I mean, quite literally. And again, I'm not like an alarmist. I didn't grow up like I grew up like, if anything, on the other end of it, where my parents were not talking about things like this in the house. We were not particularly concerned about this. It was a blue collar household. But just doing what I do for a living, it's obvious. It's very obvious. So I think more information, more discourse will help bring it out into the open.
Which is I think your whole MO on social media, on TikTok and Instagram, is informing people of a lot of things that either is not on their radar. Like, I just had a surgery 2.5 weeks ago, and it was in a surgery center. I think it's the third or fourth time I've used this surgery center. And of course, last night I'm watching your video and it's like,
Oh,
you
no.
should be really informed if it's in a surgery center or it's a hospital. And I'm watching that. I'm like, I'm a college educated person. Like I long line of family members that graduated from college, and it wasn't even on my radar to even consider to ask that. Like, I think there's also a fear of asking.
Yeah.
It's intimidating to go, hey, like, what if I want to do this in a hospital? Like, what if my doctor's offended by that? What if she says, oh, it's fine, you'll be fine, don't even worry about it? And then you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to be fine. Like, there's a fear inside of the average person to even ask the questions that you're talking about.
Well, there's a fear also with people asking lawyers questions or getting information from lawyers, because lawyers traditionally have done a terrible job at communicating with the public. I mean, if you think about what lawyer communication with the public has been, it's billboards of men that look the same repeatedly over and over again in suits that aren't even that good, by the way. Just hire me. And then you're like, why? Why would I hire you? You're some random dude. That's like literally, like, it's been that, or TV commercials where it's just a blanket solicitation of, have you been hurt by this? Call me. Yeah. And I'm not even knocking any of those forms of advertising. I'm really not, because in a funny way, like, those lawyers actually help too, because in one way or the other, clients are then funneled to real lawyers who actually handle the case and then bring real cases against big companies like this that do bad stuff. So I'm not knocking it per se. What I'm saying is, I think we need more genuine content of just information and factual data, and I try to be like approachable in my videos, and it's not like I'm faking my personality. I mean, I'm just being me, but it's important that you're not like, oh, I'm a lawyer and because that causes people to not want to interact with you because they feel intimidated, or I don't know, ask you a stupid question, where it's like,
right.
There's no such.
It's totally the stupid question.
There's no such. It's like I didn't go to medical school, so I don't know what I'm talking about with medicine. So why would anyone who didn't go to law school know anything about this, right? So I feel it's my obligation to help kind of communicate these things in a way that people actually understand, as opposed to what a lot of lawyers want to do, which is like show everyone how smart they are, and I'm so much smarter than you that you don't even know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it totally does, because like, a lot of the words are in Latin. So let's start there. Yeah. I think we're getting a little bit of education, and have been for a while now, with having cases streamed on television. We're learning about words like affidavit and what up, whatever, quid pro quo and blah, blah, blah. Like, we learn those words because we're watching them on television. So it does become a little bit more accessible. We're learning about, but at the same time, when you're in it and you're been victimized, it is scary, to ask questions. We talked about, you got into this line of work because just to be honest, a lot of people look at jobs and lawyers that do what you do, which is sue people for malpractice or whatever. That's the ambulance chaser. But the one thing that I love about you, and why I started following you to begin with, is that you got into this line of work because your family was affected by the loss of your grandmother. And that's why you got into this, because you guys were treated poorly when your grandmother lost her life, and you're like, never again. I don't want anyone to ever have to go through this. And so, can you talk about, like, how this is your life's work because you don't want anyone to ever have to go through that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, my grandmom died when I was 18. After being a big part of my upbringing, she helped raise me. Medical malpractice, she died from that. And we couldn't find a lawyer to take the case. They just didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to hear it. It was like talking about someone that wasn't even really, it was like we were talking to someone about a used car. Like, that's the kind of vibe that I got from the lawyers. And I had never had any contact with lawyers really in my life. We never had any reason to. And I was a very hurtful and difficult process because we got basically turned away. And, you approach a lawyer, the act of even reaching out sometimes is difficult because you're scared. You don't know, something really terrible just happened, and you're going to have to talk to someone about something you don't understand, the law, and hope that there's some, compassion there. And when there wasn't, for us, it was really just traumatic. So I remember just kind of vowing to myself and to her at that time, like, I can do this. I can do this a lot better than they are, because I kind of viewed it almost, which doesn't make a ton of sense, but as a competitive baseball player, I played in college. I was a pitcher, and I viewed it kind of like that. Like, I mean, this is a skill, and it's an art form. It's supposed to be. And so if you guys suck this bad,
Can't fall off the floor.
Then I think I can do a lot better. And it's not a matter of I think I'm like smarter than you or whatever, but it's just coming into it with the right mindset of truly wanting to help, of truly wanting to listen and to hear someone, and to want to right the wrong, and not just acting like a used car salesman that's trying to make a couple bucks. I mean, that doesn't just make a difference for your client and how they feel when they're talking to you. It also makes a difference when you're someday in front of a jury and you're communicating the case to them, because jurors are people, and people are smart. I truly believe people are, for the most part, smart. I think people can see through people for the most part. I think people can tell whether someone really cares or not. And when you're going into a courtroom as a lawyer that does what I do, you are immediately up against the ambulance chaser stigma. You just are. And a lot of that stigma is justified. Some of it's not, some of it is. But you're up against it. So in the first couple of days of a trial, my main concern is communicating, is being credible with the jury and making them know that I care. I'm here for a very important reason, and that they can believe me and they can trust me, because I will show them evidence, and we're not just here in some, circus. This is a real situation that's really damaged some people. And I think that I'm rambling, but
You're not.
I think that whether or not you care or how much you care is going to be obvious to anybody listening, and it's going to affect your client's case. It's because I think the more someone believes you, and the more you believe in your client, in your case, you're going to be able to communicate that. And if you're just going through the motions to try to buy another sports car or something, that people will see that too.
Do you ever have to check yourself from getting to just be going through the motions? Do you ever have to like go, wait a minute, why am I doing this again? I gotta slow down. Or do you ever see, because you have, is it 7 practicing attorneys with you? I mean, you
8 now.
opened 8 now, so you opened your law firm at 30 years old in Philly.
33. 33, yeah. That's just
33,
yeah.
and you now have 8 lawyers with you. Do you ever have to check them and go, "Wait a minute. Like, why are we doing this? Let's slow it down a minute. You're getting a little bit too cut and paste here."
Luckily, I'm surrounded by a lot of people that love me a lot, so nobody lets me get away with anything. I purposely surround myself with people, especially at work, at people that work with me and work for me. I want I want to be. I don't know if I should say I want to be criticized, but I
Held
truly
accountable, feet to the fire.
truly believe in open transparency in that manner. I think that as a leader, I should be open to hearing things that I might not want to hear, or hearing ways that I'm doing things that I shouldn't. I think that's helpful, not hurtful. I think that's how any organization should be. I think that's how you propel forward. So we're self-governed pretty easily because everyone gives me a lot of crap all the time. But all the younger, all the lawyers here, thank God, they're all people who I know in one sense or another, their life story and their background, and they're all people who carry compassion and a deep meaning for what they do, and they wouldn't work here if they didn't. But I think that daily, I think that it's on all of us to kind of refocus when we need to, because a lot of times you're talking in dollars and cents so much every day. Everything is minimized, or it's reduced,
Quantified.
but to this monetary value, which of course is inherently imperfect, because how could you put a number on somebody's child? How could you
Yeah.
put it right? But that is what we have to do in a sense. But we have a good core focus and core mission here that everybody buys into. So I'm grateful for that.
I love that. And it comes through to me, just like I was watching your video the other day about the batteries.
Button
And
batteries.
yeah, and I mean, fortunately, and I mean, and my oldest son wears hearing aids, so those hearing aid batteries are deadly. And you just how you go to a hearing aid doctor, you're given these hearing aids, and I think he started wearing hearing aids around maybe first or second grade, so still young and dumb enough to do a lot of stupid stuff, right?
Right, right.
And not one time do you ever hear from the physician going, "You put them in, and they can open them if they want. Like, these are deadly. These will kill you." These, the what are those balls?
Water beads.
The water beads. My friend's kid was a kindergartner, and I was watching him play with them. Never in my wildest dreams would I have ever thought that this ball that starts off the size of a pin can turn into a ball that is, 5 inches in diameter and will kill you. Like, what is going on that we're creating? I mean, we got rid of the darts of the 1990s, and we joke about it, right? It's like, I survived lawn darts because I'm a Gen Xer. And lawn darts are the least of our worries when we've got hearing aid batteries and toy batteries and button batteries and water beads and all this other stuff that it's not going to maim you. It's not gonna hurt your leg. It's not gonna, put a nick in your chest. It's going to kill you dead. You're not going to survive water beads in your stomach. Why are we having these toys and these situations still around when we know this is killing kids?
Oh, well, how much time do you have? No. I think CPSC, the Consumer Protection Safety Commission. They're a federal agency that has jurisdiction over recalls of like kids' products and toys. And I think they do a good job for the most part. But again, I mean, it's a lot of pro industry influence, and that just runs rampant. So a lot of things that are objectively dangerous and objectively deadly are just kind of like on the shelves without much discussion, because we don't really have as stringent laws as we should about what you need to warn about or what a physician's obligated to tell you about. I have a lot of cases where people have a medical device implanted and they get really hurt from some known danger or known defect that the company that made the device knew about. And a lot of times they didn't tell the doctors, they never warned, they didn't put it in the warning label. So you have like, or a drug or something. I mean, Depo-Provera, a type of birth control, causes, yeah. Well,
Hey, literally everything you talk about, I'm always like,
talk about it now, but it's like, yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things like that are just not disclosed by companies.
Or it's disclosed, but in my opinion, like you're watching, like right now, like the thing is you walk into a doctor's office and you're like, I saw a video and it's about this thing that's going to save my life. And P.S. I ignored all of the possible side effects. I just want the drug, right? And it just seems like those side effects seem like some distant thing that maybe one person had, and it might have been a pre-existing condition. So pay no attention to the man behind the curtain type of thing. And
right.
I feel like that's where we're at as a society. Is that's not going to happen to me. That's that other person that had that side effect.
Yeah. Well, that's why a lot of cases I have, it's not even necessarily they didn't warn about it, but they didn't explain the prevalence of it, how frequent, how common, right? Because if you hear, oh, well, you know, in rare cases, you know, when at the end of the commercial, when they're talking 700 miles an hour, in rare cases, amputation, death, sepsis, infection, you're like, oh, well, whatever. But what if it was like 18% of the time, right?
Right.
Then you wouldn't want to do it, but they don't. But they do that on purpose, so you just breeze through it. Mentally, you're just kind of checked out.
Yep.
Fluoroquinolones, a type of antibiotic. I have a client in Massachusetts right now who, I mean, a wonderful, wonderful person whose husband had been had been nothing to do with the case, but had been a disabled veteran, like in a wheelchair because he was severely injured in combat. And she was a like super successful corporate executive at CVS and like exercise guru, like marathons, and got a UTI and was given a type of an antibiotic called a fluoroquinolone. She was given Cipro, and Cipro is a type of fluoroquinolone, and she took, I forget if it was 1 or 2 pills. She literally got the script over the phone from her nurse practitioner, like, hey, I got a UTI. It's kind of, they called in Cipro, paralyzed her. Like she went into hospice, almost died. She's now permanently disabled with permanent nerve damage and permanent gut dysfunction and permanent problems because fluoroquinolones there's a phenomenon called fluoroquinolone toxicity. It's actually written about. So it's a neurotoxin. It can attack your central nervous system, or the mechanism of the pharmacologics can attack your nervous system and just totally destroy your life. And it took the companies years to put it in the label, and then they did, but they still kind of downplayed the frequency of it. In this particular case, we sued the doctors as well and the nurse practitioner because they didn't say anything about it at all to her. It was just we put in an antibiotic, it's ready at CVS, click. But that's,
I mean, I've never had a doctor say anything in my 52 years there's ever a side effect. Never, ever, never, ever have I ever had anyone say, I'm going to write this script for you, but just understand this is the side effect. Never one time.
Yeah, they're legally, maybe once or twice, but I mean, I can't even remember. I mean, they're legally required to under something called the learned intermediary doctrine, which is just a fancy way of saying that the learned intermediary is the doctor. They're learned, they're smart, they went to medical school, they're an intermediary, they're between the patient and the company, the patient and drug company. So because they're a learned intermediary, they're supposed to then take the info that the manufacturer tells them about the drug and tell the patient, right? They're the learned intermediary. You don't go get a prescription at Johnson and Johnson at the drug company and then you get it
Right.
from a doctor. So no, but you're right. The practice is that they just don't tell anyone. I think they too probably think that, oh, what's the worst that could happen? And it's not my fault. But I mean, God forbid if I was an in-house counsel for a health system, things would be done a lot differently. But I don't think anyone's going to offer me that job anytime.
I mean, like as you're sitting here saying this, my brain's looking at it going, there should be some sort of, I mean, people don't read shit, but wouldn't it be nice if it was like, here's you're going to be this antibiotic. 20% of people, and you have to check the box. 20% of people got this. Do I
Yep.
know that? Is there another antibiotic I can have? And then you sign your name at the bottom of just even 10 of the worst things that can happen with the highest prevalence of that drug, of at least letting me know, because when you get that package from the pharmacist, it's a 27 folded thing. And you're like, okay, like what am I going to do now? I have to take this prescription.
Right.
I'm sick as a dog. This is what was prescribed to me. So when I'm listening to your video about take someone with you to the doctors, when I'm listening to your video that says ask questions, is it a physician or a surgeon, or is it a fellow, or a student that's going to be working on me? Are you also saying when you go to the doctors and they say, hey, I'm going to write you a prescription, are you allergic to penicillin? Or do you have an allergy to anything? Yes. Okay, I'm writing a prescription. Do we also then raise our hand and say, is that the best one? Is there other ones that have been used longer? Are there ones with less side effects? What, like, do we ask those questions to the doctors, are you saying?
I would. Why not? Because in my mind, in the risk benefit, like, what's the risk of asking that question? You become embarrassed and the doctor gives you an attitude. Okay. But what if like you are then educated about something and you make a different choice or pick a different drug, and that's the difference between life or death or something? These are not philosophical things. These are real
Right.
things.
That's a
But
real thing.
but there's that taboo societal pressure of there's a doctor and what do I know? And a lot of doctors, not all, but a lot of them have like there's an arrogance component. And then if you ask something like that, you're going to get like a weird look or a weird tone, like, the who do you think you are tone, or, oh yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. But I say ask. Who cares? I mean, that's their job. They don't work for free, with all due respect. And I have best friends who are physicians and family members who are healthcare providers. I'm not anti-healthcare provider. I'm just saying, like, they literally, like, that is their job. So I would say, yes, ask those questions. You don't lose anything from it, but you might gain something.
Yeah, I think that we're all very we listen to the powers that be, whatever that power is, be it a lawyer, a doctor, a politician, a business owner. We're like, well, of course they're doing the right thing. But this goes back to, have you ever thrown a can of paint away in your garbage can and not properly recycled it? And if the answer is yes, this is where we are. You know what I mean? Like, but we think, well, that person wouldn't do the wrong thing. They're going to do the right thing for me at all times. But a lot of times, I have a friend right now who their family member was written a bunch of different prescriptions. Now, mind you, all filtering under and into the same, like my chart, if you will. And everybody should have known what medication this guy was on. And no one was obviously paying attention or didn't care or whatever. And they ended up dying. And it was just like, oh no, they shouldn't. It's like, no. It's all at the same pharmacy. It's all within the same healthcare system. And because you wrote all these different prescriptions, this guy died. And, everyone's like, not me. Who are you talking about? Not me. And I think that we just trust that someone is watching. And it goes back to, I've said it 1,000 times, like, no one's coming to save any of us. Like, we really have to be advocates for ourselves and our own health and say, I mean, I was taking a medication up until a couple months ago that was giving me, and I didn't realize it, this, because my system had changed from menopause. and a drug that I've been taking, metformin, for decades. Not decades, years. Totally benign. Totally benign. Went through menopause, complete havoc, wreaked havoc. It was giving me anxiety. It was like messing up my adrenals and my kidneys because it can cause kidney problems. The kidney problems was causing adrenal issues. I was literally living anxious 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And every morning I would take 4 metformin that were just making me nuts. And then I call my doctor. I'm like, I think that this metformin is what's making me crazy, because I got off of it for 3 days and I feel like $1 million. And it's just like, yeah, metformin doesn't do that. So I don't think that that's really the problem. And it's like, oh my God, I was on it. I was anxious all day, adrenals. And now I'm off of it for 3 days and feel better. And I'm trying to tell you this, and I'm the idiot. You know what I mean? Like, it's maddening, because it's like, but what you're telling me, Meredith, doesn't fit into the box. You're not telling me something that makes sense. And it's just so frustrating. I had a talk with my, because I had, um, estrogen positive breast cancer. And when I would take vitamin D, I would have tons of hot flashes. And I'm like, why am I getting hot? Because, everyone's vitamin D is low, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I looked it up here. Vitamin D is a hormone. It's not even a vitamin. And so I messaged my oncologist. I'm like, do you know that vitamin D is a hormone? And he's like, no, it's not. And I go, this is from Mayo Clinic. This is from the CDC or whatever. This is a hormone. He's like, no, it's not. And so I like copying, pasting into my chart that vitamin D is a hormone. And I had to switch oncologists because I thought I was going to lose my mind. I'm like, if this idiot who is my oncologist, and I have estrogen positive breast cancer, which means I cannot take hormones at all, and he doesn't even know that vitamin D is a hormone, it's like, I feel like I'm going to lose my mind when you tell and then I would say, just so you know, if you have anybody else on, because I was on tamoxifen, which was, it makes you wacko anyways. And I'm like, you might want to tell people to be mindful of vitamin D, synthetic vitamin D, not the sun, that it can cause and exacerbate hot flashes. And everyone in the medical field just looks at me like I'm a freaking idiot. I'm like, I'm telling you, I stopped taking it. The hot flashes are going away. This is cause and effect. Within 24 hours, cause and effect. And it's very difficult, I think, for the average person to go, I'm getting sick from this power plant. I'm getting sick from this medication. And everyone just looks at you like you're an idiot. And I think that that's where so many people are. And then they go to a normal attorney and it's just like, yeah, you don't have a case.
I think, oh man, there's a lot I think about this. I'm trying to find the right words without sounding, yeah. There's a competency issue with many physicians. And just because you went to medical school and became a doctor does not mean you're an intelligent person. I'm sorry. Just because you went to law school and became a lawyer doesn't mean you're intelligent. Yeah, you've
mastered a subject.
Correct. And you've passed a certain number of tests to get into a certain club, but that's a limited thing that you're talking about. When you get into the real world and practice law or practice medicine, you're in the realm of humans, right? It's, you learn through textbooks in a way, but you're applying what you learn to human condition, the human problem, the human situation, the human in front of you. And I see a lot of lawyers fail at that, and a lot of doctors fail at that, regardless of what their GPA was or what law school they went to, whether they went to Yale. I don't care. And so you have these things that you just described happen. And so it's this intelligence issue that can't necessarily be defined as an academic intelligence or even an intellectual intelligence, though sometimes it is, but more of a emotional intelligence slash listening / human interaction. I mean, all these things matter a lot in terms of figuring out the problem, like vitamin D being a hormone, right? That if you look at that, you can figure it out through logical reasoning. Another thing, but I think a lot of people in law and medicine are people who this is going to piss off some of the people that maybe they're lawyers and doctors, but what else is new when I start talking? But if you, there are a lot of people that have learned to cross the T's and dot the I's correctly their whole lives, starting in elementary school, middle, and high school, right? And they've done the right thing for mom and dad, and they've been in the right club, and right. But put them outside that box, and again, in the human theater of the world, and it's like, oh, vitamin D is not like a hormone. I didn't hear that from the vitamin D rep over at the generic drug company. That when the sales representative who has 18 years less education than me didn't tell me that, so therefore it's not true. I mean, like, some people do not take it upon themselves to demand a certain level of competency and intelligence of themselves. They're sort of just going through the motions. And some of the people going through the motions are doctors.
But do you think it's like their ego? It's like, if I believe this laywoman who is telling me that she had this experience and that this thing is a fact, if I accept that and I didn't know it, then my reality of who I am as being a smart person is shattered.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, for sure. I think that, yeah, definitely. And I think I've seen lawyers act that way with people. I've seen people bring things up to lawyers that are true about the law and they didn't realize it or they got it wrong. And they, rather than say, oh, crap, I overlooked, that's a good point, let me look into that, which is the only appropriate response.
Yeah.
Opinion. But you're right. Yeah, no, it's an ego pride thing for sure. And it's like, I wish people understood it's not about that. It's about getting the right answer or doing the right thing. So,
but I think that's like so important for what you're doing with TikTok and social media is you're bringing this stuff and you're going here. Like, there's people out there that have had what you've had wrong and what you've had wrong and what you've experienced, and we've got them money and I've represented them. And you're not an idiot. You're not an idiot for the fact that your spouse is out of work because of XYZ. Like, you have a case, or you can protect your children from these things, or you can protect your mother from going to a doctor's office and not being listened to because you go with her or him or whatever. I think that with what social media to me is doing, and why I love TikTok so much, and which is why I want to interview people here on these platforms, is because you're making these topics normal. You're making these topics accessible, because for me to sit down with you is hundreds of dollars of an hour, or I can for free scroll your page and learn all of this information about law and lawsuits and detrimental experiences and ways to get hurt in the world, basically.
Yeah, no, real warm and fuzzy stuff.
You're like the social media version of, what is that, Dumb Ways to Die? It's like, dumb ways to die. Tom Password is 7,000 ways to die.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, seriously, like, you're bringing it to us lay people and going, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should be mindful and put the hearing aid button batteries up inaccessible. We think about, my mom always says, hide the car keys and hide the matches, because kids are stupid and they make dumb choices. But you don't think about, and don't buy water beads, and don't let, the hearing aid batteries be on the bottom shelf. Like, there's so many things that I, in my little vortex, don't know to know about. Right? I don't know to know about that. And so that's what I love about your page, is you're like going, you need to know about this, Meredith. You kind of need to know about this, right?
Well, you don't want me to go on a whole other diatribe about why I think Congress tried to ban TikTok, but frankly, I think that is why. I mean, it's a
stupid.
It's a huge, massive community where information that's really important can be transmitted really quickly to really like a huge masses of people who are looking for that information or need that information or want that information. That's specific to the TikTok algorithm. I think the way it spreads things out, spits things out. But I agree with you. I think it's hopefully if there's more of this and more talk about it, people will start to like. I do truly believe in 10 years we'll be in a much different place with this stuff. I think like the stuff we're talking about now will be household information, no pun intended, but where people kind of just say, oh yeah, of course. I think that's hopefully the way we're headed. But I'm with you. I'm in the camp of you have to protect yourself because no one's coming to save you.
No one's
Very
coming to
much.
save us.
I wasn't always like that. I was the person before I didn't have a medical background. I didn't go to medical school. I don't have any. I majored in English. Like, so I'm reading Shakespeare for 4 years on the beach, just having a good time. That was my college experience. So I wasn't like Mr. Science, but so I was the guy that if I went to the doctor, I believed everything they said. I didn't question anything. If the doctor said, go jump off the nearest bridge to cure your cold, I'd be like, I guess I'll be fine. Like, boom, right? Like I just was blind, right? But I couldn't continue to be that way, diving into all these medical cases over and over and over and over again. I mean, I'd have to be intentionally ignorant to just ignore what's right in front of my face. So,
Well, and I think that's the thing is you're telling people don't go blindly into any space. Like don't just sit there and wear flip-flops and put down Roundup. Don't go to a doctor's appointment, just assume that everything's going to be okay. Ask the questions. I mean, I just went and had a surgery and it's so intimidating to go, I just have to ask one more question. I just want to know this one thing. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to take up too much of your time, even though I'm literally paying cash out of pocket for the surgery.
exactly.
And you're just like so intimidated to be like, I don't want to be rude, but I just want to know this one thing. And it's so prevalent. I remember I had a cousin, or have a cousin, and she said to me one time, I don't understand why they're getting rid of like supersizing in New York City. They were McDonald's, they had to get rid of all that, like, the trough, the 2 liter of Coke, really, basically, as a size to drink. And she's like, if I want to drink my Coke, I'll drink my Coke. And I'm just like, yes, but because you're not asking the questions of like, what is that one Diet Coke going to do to you? What is that one supersized sugar Coke going to do to you? Like, we aren't asking the questions. I mean, now you go into these damn places and everything has the calories and you're just like, I'll have a soup and a salad and a water, because we are informed. Like literally that calorie count on a menu is now informed, right? And if everything had the calorie count, quote unquote, on it, think of what a different world we would live in. If you use on the side of the bottle Roundup, there is a 90% chance you are going to get leukemia. If you drink 20 gallons of Coke this week, you are going to gain 4 pounds.
Right.
We need the calorie count, if you will, on more things so that we are more informed. Because I know for a fact, I used to order a scone every time I went to Starbucks. And then I found out they were 490 calories, and I never order that scone anymore because I'm like, holy shit, that's a ton of that's a third of my calories in a day. And so like, I think that that's the problem. And what you're doing is you're giving everyone on social media the calorie count of shit that we don't know about.
Yeah. And by the way, just before we like, I need to get out on the record because I get a lot of people like in the comment, like one of the most frequent comments I get on TikTok is like wow, you're the life of the party. which I am not. Like, I don't walk around like tiptoeing through the streets like with like gloves on and like a mask. I'm literally the opposite. I grew up in the woods. I didn't wear a shirt, four-wheeling, climbing trees, breaking bones, trampoline, sports. I grew up like, and I have kids too, and they have a blast. We do a lot of fun stuff. So my message is not to avoid life and avoid adventure and avoid fun. My message is like, you should be informed, and so you can do whatever you want and make your own decisions. But you should also know there's all these sinister things that we encounter that, I'm not some like whiny, like whatever. Like, these are scientific studied things that you should at least know about. And again, not go hide in a freaking closet your whole life and do nothing fun. But like, there's seemingly normal things that are killing you. There's seemingly like normal things that are dangerous. There's seemingly normal things that are cancerous. It's not like some conspiracy theory. And I think, but if I didn't say it, or I don't want to take all the credit, but if people didn't talk about it, if there weren't voices, then how the hell would you know? You think the company's going to think Monsanto's going to tell you Roundup causes cancer? I mean, they've had 60 years to do it. They still don't put it on their warning label. Yet they're getting hit with like multi-billion-dollar verdicts still to this day. And I have Roundup clients too. So yeah, I mean, I hope that makes sense. But I
think people think if it's out there, it's okay.
They do.
It wouldn't be out there if it wasn't okay.
But that's not the case. Yeah.
That's not the case. And I think that's your point, is just because it's out there doesn't mean it's okay.
Yes.
Doesn't mean it's good for you. Doesn't mean, whatever. This, be mindful. And that's what I so appreciate about your content. And I think it's so funny because like talking to you here, you're like animated and all that stuff. And sometimes you just have like the best, like droll, very, I don't even know how to describe it. You just like come in and you're just like, all right, this is what's going on. When your delivery is just so like freaking dry, and I love it. You're like, I'm about to deliver catastrophic news. And here it comes, and I am barely going to move my lips while I tell it to you. And it's just like, I don't know. I just love it so much because it's, what do you do though? I mean, how do you talk about these serious subjects that are killing children or people? You can't really do it with a smile on your face on it. I mean, you kind of do have to pull at it, like kind of factually, like like an encyclopedia, like here's the facts. But I just love you so much. And I think you're just the best, and your content's so important. And, what I never asked you in the last interview, who like can come to you? Because I know you're in Philly, but who do you service? You just said you had a client that was in another state. So like, where do you practice?
Yeah, so I'm like licensed, so to speak, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey. I live in Pennsylvania, but I get brought into cases nationally all the time, and I'm able to do that luckily through like this thing called pro hoc vice admission, which is an old Latin word. And all that means is that if somebody in Massachusetts calls me and says, Tom, I want you to help me represent me, I can be quote unquote admitted to practice for that case, basically through what we call local counsel, a Massachusetts licensed lawyer who vouches for you. They file a pro hoc vice admission. So you're admitted pro hoc vice for that case. And I do that all the time. I mean, I do that in various cases. So I'm based in Pennsylvania, but I get questions and people reach out to me all over the place. And I want that. I welcome that, just because I think, and I know a great network of lawyers who are like-minded, like I am, do the same type of thing in every single state in the whole country. So that's cool too, because I'll get people from Idaho or Wisconsin, and I know who I need to connect them with.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. Thank you again for being on with me. I could literally just start a whole podcast with you and just talk about this shit all day long, because I love it. I mean, even though they're horrible topics to talk about, I just think they're so important, and so many people are being victimized every single day and don't even realize it. And then, the statute of limitations passes by and they're just left in the dust to try to exist the rest of their life in pain or worse. And, they don't even realize they have a case. So check out your Tommy the Lawyer on TikTok. And what is it again on
Instagram? It's Lawyer Tom Bosworth, which is my name. Tom Bosworth.
Lawyer Tom Bosworth on Instagram. I didn't write it down. I didn't have much time between us. So I didn't write it down today. But check him out on Instagram and TikTok. He's bringing so much information. Do you do any class actions, or yours primarily like one-on-one situations?
I do have a number of like what I call mass torts. I call them, but that's kind of the same deal, but like against Monsanto or again for Roundup and other situations. Like I represent a group of people in Pennsylvania who got cancer from cancerous gases being emitted from a particular plant. So yeah, I'm involved in that stuff too.
Wow. You got a lot going on for being a young dad and a young guy, but I so appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on again. You're the best.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I'll see you here next week. They're going to interview some more TikTok famous people that are just bringing themselves to the forefront of what is going on in the world. So see you guys next week.
Thanks for tuning in to the TikTok Famous Podcast with Meredith Willits. If you're loving the unfiltered stories and behind-the-scenes truths, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show. Until next time, let's get famous.